I am the future crown princess. A woman searching for her husband from 1,000 miles away stopped my carriage in the street. She took out the crown prince's personal jade pendant and provocatively claimed that the crown prince had already married her among the common folk. Unfortunately for her, she didn't realize that making me the crown princess was a deliberate act by the emperor to declare his favor. This position was not hers to take. Ding! RoyalStory reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. When the crown prince saw me, there was a flicker of astonishment in his eyes. After all, following behind me was young Mei Lin, the woman who had traveled 1,000 miles in search of her husband. She ignored the strange looks from the attendants and maidservants around her, ran out from behind me, and threw herself into the crown prince's arms, wrapping her arms around his waist, and softly called, "Honey." At this moment, all kinds of eyes were focused on me. But I maintained the utmost composure of a noblewoman, covering my mouth with a handkerchief and coughing lightly twice. The crown prince, immersed in shock, only snapped back to reality at the sound of my light coughs. He looked down and asked the woman in his arms, "Mei Lin, why are you here?" He hesitated to speak further, but the woman in his arms blinked her moist eyes, displaying a pitiful expression. She looked at the crown prince, her eyes reddening in an instant, and said softly, "Didn't you say you were only going to the capital to visit relatives? Why didn't you come back? I have searched for you tirelessly." Everyone's eyes were on them, and even I felt like a spectator, curious to see how the crown prince would explain himself. But he stammered for a long time and only said, "At that time, the situation was unclear, and I didn't dare to tell you everything. I planned to send someone to fetch you once everything's settled." As soon as he said this, young Mei Lin's gaze shifted towards me, scrutinizing me with a hint of hostility, then appropriately showing a bit of grievance and softly saying to the crown prince, "But when I arrived in the capital, they said the crown prince is about to marry, that the crown princess will soon reside in the Eastern Palace, so what am I?" After saying that, she appropriately shed a few tears. The crown prince felt pity and wiped her tears, comforting her, "Since you are here, stay for now. As for other matters, we will discuss them later." Miss Yang was a smart woman. She took the step provided and descended graciously, gaining the crown prince's sympathy, thus avoiding the need for forceful coercion. As for the other matters the crown prince mentioned, it was most likely about her status. The maid led young Mei Lin to the back courtyard. At the moment of passing me, her eyebrows raised in a provocative expression, and a faint smile hung on her lips. This Miss Yang seemed anything but simple. At this moment, I also had nothing to say to the crown prince and turned to return to the Wei family. However, bad news always spreads fast. The news that the crown prince had already married among the common folk quickly spread throughout the capital, becoming a topic of gossip over meals. My marriage with the crown prince became a laughingstock, bringing disgrace to the Wei family. Even though the marriage was not yet decreed by the palace, he had already performed wedding rites with young Mei Lin among the common folk, establishing her status, which he himself acknowledged. Everyone praised young Mei Lin for her good fortune, being a fisher girl from the South City who saved a drowning young man by the river, gaining an advantageous husband who turned out to be none other than the noble crown prince, saying she was destined for greatness and rose to the top with a single step. Only I was left in an awkward position. Wherever I went, I was followed by strange looks from everyone around. In such a situation, I could only shut myself indoors and decline all invitations from various households. I was waiting for the crown prince to come to my door. When he arrived, I was sitting in the garden trimming orchid leaves. "Has your highness come up with a solution?" I looked up at him hurrying over, seemingly lacking his usual composed demeanor. "Wei Kuxing, you will be the crown princess, and Mei Lin shall be a consort entered into the royal registry. This is the greatest concession I can make," he said firmly, a hint of self-satisfaction in his eyes. The greatest concession? It seemed giving me the position of crown princess was already a huge favor to me. Oh. The principal wife becoming a concubine, is Miss Yang willing to accept that? I continued to lower my head, gently stroking the orchid leaves, speaking nonchalantly. His brows furrowed slightly, and then he said, "Mei Lin only cares about me alone, not like other women who covet high positions." The last sentence seemed to be directed at me. Coveting high positions? Did I covet the crown princess position? Even if she wanted to covet it, she needed the emperor's approval first. I sneered and laughed lightly, since Miss Yang's character is so noble, she would be suitable for a true gentleman. It's really a pity. Upon hearing this, the crown prince's face gradually darkened, sharp-tongued as ever. I sneered, indifferent. He heard the mockery in my voice, sensing that I thought him unworthy of a gentleman and it was a pity for young Mei Lin to become a concubine. He spoke again. Mei Lin is a gentle and kind woman, always harmonious and unaggressive. She won't obstruct your path. It is you who have been proud for many years. If you cannot tolerate her, it will truly bring discord to the household. I have come today to remind you that I will not tolerate any foul means in our household. Sure enough, we weren't even married yet, and his bias was already evident. What to do then? I am willful and do things my own way. There will definitely be times when I make the crown prince unhappy and trouble the concubine in the future. I spread my hands, speaking fearlessly. He was furious, seemingly wanting to argue with me. Do you know the principles for women? The 3 obediences and 4 virtues? The 3 cardinal guides and 5 constant virtues? Follow your husband once married. The husband is the leader of the wife. With your lack of obedience, how can I tolerate you in the future? I waved my hand dismissively, laughing. We'll see about that in the future. He left in a huff. Nowadays, in this vast mansion, only my grandmother and I are left. My father and brothers all died on the battlefield, wrapped in horse leather. This marriage is the emperor's way of showing his grace. The position of crown princess was untouchable, so he could only grant young Mei Lin the position of concubine. On the day of the Lantern Festival, I sat on a painted boat by the river, watching the crown prince accompany her to the Lantern Fair. Winning the prizes for her and painting together in the bustling city streets with affectionate gazes. Although the surrounding people didn't know their identities, their talent and beauty drew continuous cheers from the crowd, making them appear to be a perfect couple. Surely, the crown prince had long harbored resentment towards the emperor's granted marriage, and now he showed no hesitation in publicly shaming me. I toyed with my wine cup, drinking several more cups in succession. I left the boat, walking lightly to a nearby spot, watching the two of them from a distance. Their smiles froze suddenly, as if my appearance had spoiled their mood. The crown prince ignored me and left with her in his arms. I took the flower lantern handed over by a maid and walked down the steps, crouching by the river to gently place the lantern into the water, letting it drift away. The maid, Dong Mei, voiced her anger on my behalf. Miss shouldn't be treated so coldly. The marriage is not yet official, and the crown prince is already so wanton. If he favors her after the marriage, she will surely dominate you. I slowly stood up, looking at the floating lantern, and smiled lightly. How long can royal affections last? If she truly relies on this temporary sentiment, how can she deserve my attention? After returning to the mansion, I heard that grandmother wanted to see me. I entered her courtyard, where she was sitting with her eyes closed, silently chanting beads. Clearly, the rumors in the capital had reached her ears. She opened her eyes and asked, "Was the lantern fair lively? Did you enjoy it?" I nodded and smiled. The lights were splendid, very lively. Maintaining composure is good, life's not about a single night. Her voice was gentle, aimed at comforting me. The crown prince's trip to the South City was attacked, and young Mei Lin saved him. They fell in love and married amongst the common folk. Now with young Mei Lin found, I, the future crown princess, am the biggest object of ridicule. At this moment, I couldn't lose my composure. Acting like a resentful woman would only invite more ridicule. I stood by her obediently and said, "Your granddaughter understands and knows what to do." Young Mei Lin was brought into the palace, where nannies instructed her in proper etiquette. Evidently, the empress had already yielded to the crown prince's wishes. She was likely displeased with me as the crown princess, for the Wei family had fallen, and our current standing in the capital relied on the emperor's favor and past deeds. But our former glory was no longer visible. My marriage was just a symbol, the emperor showing the world he was benevolent to his meritorious subjects. My status no longer helped the crown prince in the slightest. Instead, his status was used to embellish our declining family. The empress, already displeased, used young Mei Lin to provoke me. I heard that young Mei Lin learned the rules quickly, earning the nanny's praise and the empress's commendation. The empress hosted a flower viewing banquet and sent invitations. It was an invitation I couldn't refuse. When I arrived, I saw Yang Mei-lin standing next to the empress, looking very close. The empress even personally picked a peony flower and handed it to her, praising her for her manners and saying she felt reassured with someone like her serving the crown prince. Everyone around praised Yang Mei-lin, looking at me with knowing glances. The empress publicly acknowledged her, which was also a blow to me. Yang Mei-lin smiled triumphantly amidst the compliments, her gaze fully challenging. She became the empress's tool to crush my spirit. When everyone gathered, I didn't want to join in their conversations, so I walked around the corridor and sat alone in the corner pavilion. But Yang Mei-lin followed. She sat casually opposite me, laughing. "Miss Wei, do you see the situation clearly now? If you enter the Eastern Palace, this is what you will face." Her arrogance was puzzling. Even if the Empress and the Crown Prince dislike me, this is all they can do. "What you want, you still won't get," I stated calmly. A flash of unwillingness crossed her eyes, and she said angrily, "Yes, how can it compare to Miss Wei, who has her father and brothers earning her high status with their lives? But in the dead of night, do you feel the pain?" Next moment, she cried out in pain, clutching her face in shock. I had already slapped her, leaving her stunned. I never took her provocations seriously, but this time, she crossed the line. I grabbed her throat and pressed her against the pillar, tightening my grip. "My father and brothers died on the battlefield. How dare you speak ill of them? Compared to their lives, the position you covet is worthless." Her panic was evident. She didn't expect me to act in the deep palace. The Wei family is a family of generals. My father and brothers were talented generals. Though I'm a woman, I am not powerless. If there's a next time, the warning won't be this mild. I released her slowly. She seemed ready to call for help, but I warned her again, "You've already had enough attention today. If you escalate things, it will be counterproductive." She abandoned the thought. I didn't want further entanglement. I had attended the banquet and accounted to the Empress. On the way back in the carriage, Dong Mei complained, "The royal family is really too much. The master and the young master fought and died for the country, yet now they are bullying you without any support behind you." I patted her shoulder and slowly said, "Out of sight, out of mind. Who would always remember? When the emperor speaks of them, it's to remember the meritorious ministers. But if we mention it, it's seen as boasting. Besides, the empress gifting the marriage is to show the ministers that he hasn't mistreated the loyal families. He only cares about giving the marriage, not whether I'm wronged in the backyard or not. I'm just a tool to show the benevolence of the emperor." Her eyes turned red, but she dared not continue speaking. Back at the mansion, I received a letter from my father's old subordinates. "I've been out of the capital for about 10 days. Upon my return, I heard that the Crown Prince requested to inspect the northern border for training and asked to postpone the wedding for 2 years. This move clearly shows his intention to delay me." Meanwhile, Yang Mei-lin caused a ruckus at the Wei residence, angering my grandmother to the point of fainting. The servants found me at the city gate. I hurried back to the mansion, just in time to see Yang Mei-lin about to leave, looking arrogant. But I understood who she relied on for this audacity. Without the Empress's backing, how would she dare to act like this? Upon seeing me, she even mocked, "Your father and brothers are gone, the Wei family is just an empty shell now. Once you marry, only the old bones will be left in the Wei residence. The days of glory are over, how long can you still enjoy any splendor? The Empress and the Crown Prince despise you. Why do you still cling on?" My hand clenched tightly, choking back tears. "The Empress and Crown Prince favor you and indulge you, so you think you can humiliate the Wei family like this? My father and brothers died in battle, their bones buried in the Green Mountains. Now, with no one to support the Wei family, it's just my grandmother and me living together. If you want the position of the Crown Prince's consort, just take it." As I spoke, tears fell, and I sobbed, directing the blame towards the Empress and the Crown Prince. The Empress wants to remain hidden, but that's not so simple. People crowded at the mansion gates, pointing fingers and discussing the empress and the crown prince, further fueled by recent rumors about her background. The sons of the Wei family died on the battlefield. Now, only the old lady and a young girl are left, still being bullied. It's truly disheartening. If the royal family is dissatisfied with the marriage, they should call it off instead of humiliating them. I heard this girl is dear to the crown prince, very skillful. The empress is satisfied with her, and the crown prince dotes on her. She's probably acting arrogant because of her backing. Rumors can harm, but they can also help. The empress constantly humiliates and allows rumors, hoping I'll retreat and willingly give up my place. But her and the crown prince's actions over the past days, combined with today's events, made it apparent she was bullying the defenseless Wei family, disheartening the old ministers. Today's rumors were aimed at the crown prince. Young Mei Lin ultimately couldn't bear being scorned and fled in disgrace. Watching her panicked and lost back, I found it amusing. By showing weakness, I put them on the spot. Today's performance was a carefully laid trap aimed at her. I fear nothing but her not causing trouble. After checking on my grandmother, I had the servants search the city for renowned doctors. For a time, it caused quite a stir, with rumors swirling among the noble families in the capital. But this time, it wasn't just idle gossip. The censors submitted memorials, impeaching the crown prince for his misconduct and negligence of propriety. Old ministers also petitioned, complaining about the mistreatment of loyal families, making it truly disheartening. The crown prince was publicly reprimanded by the emperor in court. Rewards flowed to the Wei residents, showing the emperor's intention to appease. The imperial doctors came to check on my grandmother, reporting that her anger caused her to faint and she needed to rest. The crown prince personally brought various supplements to the mansion, along with young Mei Lin. But their faces didn't look too good. After all, this was a form of capitulation. Probably, they were forced and had no choice but to come. The servants behind them carried all sorts of precious herbs in a line. The crown prince lightly coughed and asked, "How is the old lady?" "I came to visit." I raised my hand slightly, and a maid led the way, taking him to the courtyard. His visit was undoubtedly under the emperor's pressure, just for show. I didn't need to listen closely. He would just say some meaningless words of concern to my grandmother. He ordered a servant to present a brocade box to me, containing a jade pendant of a blue phoenix. This was a special item from the royal family, only bestowed upon the crown princess, symbolizing her noble status. I thought of the white jade pendant young Mei Lin had shown. That was his personal jade. 2 jade pendants clearly showed the difference in closeness. The crown prince looked at the jade and said softly, "Our wedding date won't be postponed anymore. The Ministry of Rights has chosen a date, next month 16th. Mei Lin has agreed to step down to the position of a concubine. From now on, you two should get along for the good of the Eastern Palace." Step down? Does that mean she's giving this position to me? It seems even after this turmoil, the crown prince hasn't fully woken up. He thinks letting me enter the Eastern Palace is a huge favor. The emperor put him under house arrest and denied his request to inspect the northern border and delay the wedding. Everyone in the court knew. Even his visit here was forced by the emperor's pressure. Yet, till now, he still thinks having both wife and concubine living harmoniously can solve today's predicament. My eyes darkened, and I replied softly, "Your Highness should give it to me after the wedding." Seeing me not accepting, he became displeased, lowering his voice to scold. Mei Lin did cause trouble, but my father reprimanded and punished her. The imperial family has given the Wei family all the rewards and honor. What more do you want? If you push your luck, you might end up with nothing. His voice was full of impatience. Your Highness came to seek peace, you should have a seeking peace attitude. My tone was cold, making him suddenly realize his mistake, and he softened his attitude. He still chatted idly with my grandmother for a while, but I left the courtyard and saw young Mei Lin standing by the pond. In grandmother's courtyard, she probably didn't dare to enter now. Though forced to come today with a humbled attitude, I still saw the unwillingness in her eyes. I heard that the most capable servant by the Empress Dowager's side stayed in the East Palace for a month, ordered to educate young Mei Lin. This time, she is likely to deeply feel the torturous methods within the palace's restricted quarters. Her face was somewhat pale, and her gaze somewhat flitting. However, this was not enough. I had to tell her a shocking piece of news. You look very much like someone, the current censor's wife. Her lips quivered, her eyes filled with shock as she looked at me in panic. What did you say? I repeated, you bear a 70% resemblance to the current censor's wife. The crown prince sees another woman through you, a woman he pursued but couldn't have and regrets missing. Impossible. She staggered back a step, her eyes full of fear and unease. I knew what she feared. Her entire honor and disgrace were tied to the crown prince. A minor punishment in the palace might make her suffer physically, but it couldn't shake her foundation. Only the crown prince's affection was something she couldn't afford to lose. If all the love from the past turned out to be fake, and all the tender glances were actually meant for someone else, how would she cope in the future? These were things she had to face. You can take a look at that woman's appearance yourself, and then compare it with the portraits in the East Palace Library, and you will get the answer. 3 years ago, I once inadvertently entered the East Palace Library and saw that portrait, learning about the crown prince's secret, unspeakable feelings. On the day Yang Mei-lin blocked my carriage on the street, seeing her face confirmed the crown prince's intentions even more. Yang Mei-lin stood there, pale-faced, still in a daze even when the crown prince came out, then she followed him step by step. When they left, I saw the luxurious sedan outside the mansion, truly opulent and attention-grabbing, with the surrounding people gossiping. Such a grand spectacle. The crown prince made such a public show to let the emperor and the people see that he came personally, to quell the rumors. I saw him extend his hand and help Yang Mei-lin onto that splendid carriage and leave with great fanfare. Such a flaunting parade, truly a painstaking effort on his part. Back at the mansion, I stayed by grandmother's bedside. Leaning on the couch, she gently turned the prayer beads in her hand and softly said, "You did very well in this matter." I responded solemnly, since childhood, grandmother taught me that even if only women are left in the Wei mansion, we must not be bullied. I have always remembered. That day, when the servant came to find me at the city gate, hinting with their words, I guessed grandmother's intentions. I followed the plan, deliberately letting the matter escalate, and then acted weak intentionally, making a big scene through the mouths of others. Later, what people saw was the empress and the crown prince dissatisfied with me, using Yang Mei-lin to make a great fuss at the Wei mansion. Insulting the noble house with no one to defend us, intending to break off the engagement. Grandmother, angered to the point of a heart attack, and I, with no support, had to give up my position as crown princess out of desperation. Grandmother fainted in extreme anger, and I cried on the spot. This was enough to make the rumors in the capital take another direction. Portraying the royal family as reneging and intending to annul the engagement, mistreating the descendants of meritorious officials, and allowing others to insult us. On that day, my father and brothers defended Qingyang Pass till the last moment, neither retreating nor surrendering. The snow and wind buried the city, as well as their bones. After that, only grandmother and I were left in the Wei family. When the news came back, the emperor, to show his grace and favor, decreed the engagement. But times changed, and people forgot the dangers of the Battle of Qingyang Pass and my father and brother's sacrifice. Instead, they only saw that the Wei family had no successors, the mansion declining, and thus thought I was unworthy of the crown prince. In the empress's eyes, there were plenty of noble ladies in the capital to match the crown prince, providing support to solidify his position in the East Palace. But the emperor used his marriage to show grace to the world, using the glory of the East Palace to add splendor to the declining Wei family. The empress wanted to privately embarrass me and my grandmother, making me retreat in the face of difficulties. However, the development went beyond her expectations, and she couldn't control it. She lavished praise and favor on Yang Mei-lin, just to promote her arrogance and use her against me, never intending to make her crown princess. As for the grand wedding of the crown prince and Yang Mei-lin out of the palace, to the empress, it was just a farce, not even worth mentioning. But she still gave Yang Mei-lin hope, fostering an undue ambition, making her a tool to be used. Grandmother patted my hand, her eyes full of worry. "I can't do much for you with my old bones, but the crown prince is not a good man." "I understand, so this game is not over." As my words fell, grandmother seemed to understand what I was about to do. The crown prince thought that today was reconciliation, and henceforth, the wife and concubine would live in harmony, and the deadlock would be resolved. Unfortunately, This was not the end, but only a beginning. I returned to the courtyard where Dong Mei brought me hot tea. As I was sipping the tea, she spoke again. The crown prince came this time, bringing that seductive woman, clearly showing no regard for you, miss, always favoring her. After marriage, how will you live? The empress also speaks for her. If you were wronged, no one would stand up for you. Living in the East Palace, you would be at their mercy. I listened to her familiar refrain and asked, then what do you think I should do? She responded, you should take advantage of the current situation, make a scene, and show the East Palace a lesson so that they won't dare to look down on you. I gently set down the teacup I picked up and looked up at her. Dong Mei, you have been in the mansion for 3 years, and I have treated you well, haven't I? Miss has treated me with great kindness. Why say such things today? She still smiled brightly as she spoke. Very well, since the kindness is as heavy as a mountain, it's time for you to repay the favor. I want to see your master behind the scenes. My voice was gentle, but the smile on her face froze instantly. Her eyes flickered with panic, yet she stubbornly said, is Miss joking? I detest traitors, but tolerated you for so long. Must I wait until the blade is on your neck for you to realize whether I am joking? I looked at her with a half smile. She knelt down with a thud. Please forgive me, Mississippi. Go. As dusk fell, she hurried out of the mansion. I stood with my hands behind my back, watching her departing figure. The next morning, she was already kneeling in front of me, whispering, the master has arranged to meet you today. I rode in a carriage with her outside, but once we left the city gates, she covered my eyes with a light veil. After reaching the destination, she led me by the hand into a house, seemingly bypassing several courtyards before bringing me into a courtyard. As soon as she removed the veil, I looked at the person in front of me without a hint of surprise. Your Highness, the 4th Prince, so it was you. I looked up to see him dressed in a dark robe embroidered with silver cloud patterns, intricate and luxurious. He sat high, looked at me casually, his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and said in a deep voice, Dong Mei once said you had an insightful mind that she couldn't influence your thoughts, but I didn't expect you to be so wise as to guess my existence. Not only did I guess your existence, but I also guessed that there was someone like Dong Mei around Yang Mei Lin, fueling her ambitions and manipulating her thoughts, guiding her actions step by step according to your plans, I said firmly, staring at him, not probing. The casual scrutiny on his face gradually faded away, replaced by a slow smile, as you said, you guessed right. She was just a fisherwoman from the South City. Without my guidance and secret assistance, how could she have found the crown prince so smoothly? And how could she have the ambition to become the mistress of the Eastern Palace today? Unfortunately, she could not realize it. But you, having seen through the intrigue behind, still insisted on meeting me. What do you intend? He had placed a pawn beside me and also beside Yang Mei Lin, intending to manipulate our actions with these 2 pawns. His invisible hands entered the game early, wanting to set me and Yang Mei Lin against each other. Once things escalated, we both would become his chess pieces, leading to various forces joining in, and naturally causing chaos in the Eastern Palace, oppressing the crown prince, resulting in the current situation. Dong Mei entered the mansion 3 years ago, and his hand reached the Wei mansion as well as my side 3 years ago. Setting up the pawns early because I was to be the future crown princess. Yang Mei Lin saving the crown prince happened a year ago, becoming the crown prince's wife among the common people, with subsequent events being part of his step-by-step plan and secret guidance. I chuckled lightly. Your Highness asks what my intentions are? Are you worried that I will ruin your plans? His eyes darkened, emotions hard to discern. I spoke clearly, Your Highness need not worry. Seeing through the scheme, I have no desire to break it. Meeting the orchestrator is to tell you, I won't be a pawn manipulated by others but will be an excellent ally. He finally looked at me, eyebrows slightly raised. You want me to help you? I looked him straight in the eye, calmly refuting, no. Your Highness is mistaken, it's I who is helping you. His previously indifferent attitude completely faded, and his eyes showed some surprise. Then he solemnly said, what did you say? Your Highness wants a change in the Eastern Palace, and I am willing to lend you a helping hand. As my words fell, he was still in hesitation. I spoke again. Your Highness let Dong Mei say provocative words beside me. didn't you want me to retire from the engagement with great fanfare? This way, you would dampen the morale of the Eastern Palace, causing the Crown Prince's reputation to deteriorate between the court and the people, losing support. I understand your scheme but am willing to facilitate it. At these words, disbelief filled his eyes. I returned to the mansion and visited my grandmother. That evening, news spread throughout the capital, saying that the old lady of the Wei mansion's condition had worsened. The rumor in the streets was that the Crown Prince visiting with Yang Mei-lin, the sight of the two inseparable, further agitated the old lady, causing a relapse in her illness. The incident became a hot topic in tea houses and taverns. I quietly listened to the wind and rain in the mansion, leisurely tending to flowers and plants. Until Dong Mei told me, now the rumors say the Crown Prince intentionally brought Yang Mei-lin to the mansion. Intending to embarrass the Wei family, deliberately forcing a confrontation, and many people are indignant, sympathizing with you. I slowly put down the scissors in my hand, the time had come. Grandmother wore her ceremonial attire, personally entered the palace, knelt before the emperor, and said the Wei family's fortune was thin, unfit to marry into the royal family, requesting the emperor to revoke the edict and choose another worthy match for the crown prince. I followed her into the palace, kneeling behind her. All the palace servants and ministers watched the scene, with grandmother and me bowing on the countless white jade steps. But now, only my grandmother and I remained in the Wei household. Thinking of past military exploits and glory, now we relied on each other, suffering humiliation. Many couldn't help but sigh softly as they passed by, a hint of sympathy in their expressions. Eventually, the emperor issued a decree, granting the Wei family's request, and bestowed us with gold and fertile land. The incident had already become a huge scandal, continuing to persist would make the entire royal family a laughingstock among the common folk. The Wei family proactively withdrawing from the engagement was the best step, an opportunity to minimize losses. I supported my grandmother on the palace path, looked up at the blue tiles and red walls, feeling cramped, while the vast world outside the palace brought comfort. After getting into the carriage, I let down the curtain, leaned beside my grandmother, and softly said, "The Empress and the Crown Prince both hoped that I would voluntarily withdraw from the engagement but didn't expect the situation to become like this. They wanted me to bear the humiliation, swallow the bitterness, give up the position quietly, minimizing the impact, not causing such widespread attention." Grandmother held my hand, saying solemnly, "The sons of the Wei family have their spirited blood, and the daughters of the Wei family will never be ones to endure humiliation. After today, the Crown Prince's reputation would be damaged, losing support." The emperor issued another decree, ordering the Crown Prince to reflect on his actions at his residence for 6 months, not attending court matters. This was effectively house arrest. I gradually faded from everyone's sight, and the emperor bestowing gold and fertile land was a gesture of appeasement, aiming to calm the situation. My presence would only keep the rumors alive, which was not what the emperor wanted now. I planned to leave the capital to check the accounts at the estate and live in the suburban villa, also to avoid the limelight. Before leaving, I encountered the fourth prince at the city gate. We exchanged glances and hurried past each other. I took a group of household servants and the steward to the estate, checking accounts and registering daily chores. The days passed quickly. In a blink, a year had gone by. It was reported that during the prince's house arrest, the fourth prince gained significant influence. The emperor entrusted him with important duties, putting him in charge of the wind guards. Moreover, the fourth prince proposed many policies beneficial to the country and its people, earning praise across the court and the populace. After the crown prince's house arrest period ended, his momentum was not as strong as before. He was overshadowed by the fourth prince in many matters. The emperor was also dissatisfied with him, showing him cold treatment. The court and the public, because of his previous actions, felt he lacked the virtue and talent to be the heir apparent, and spoke ill of him. Meanwhile, the crown prince hosted a banquet intending to assert his authority, but a shocking scandal was uncovered. A painting of the censor's wife was found in the Eastern Palace library, spreading rumors that the crown prince coveted his subjects' wives. It was said that during the banquet, someone accidentally entered the library drunk, knocked over a candlestick, and in the rushed attempt to extinguish the fire, the painting was exposed. It turned out to be drawn by the crown prince himself. The crown prince claimed the painting was of Yang Mei-lin, but everyone saw that the signature at the end was dated several years ago. A time when the crown prince did not yet know Yang Mei-lin. Thus, it was clear that the woman in the painting was not young Mei Lin, but the censor's wife, Su Xiao. Su Xiao, the daughter of the national preceptor, grew up in the palace, almost like childhood sweethearts with the crown prince. However, she was hastily married off to the censor by the empress's decree. In hindsight, it became clear that this unfulfilled young love of the crown prince turned into a lingering obsession. Perhaps his marriage to young Mei Lin was an attempt to fill this void, and his subsequent favoritism towards young Mei Lin was likely influenced by memories of Su Xiao. This old affair being brought to light was undoubtedly the handiwork of the fourth prince. Subsequently, numerous veteran officials petitioned, arguing that the crown prince lacked talent and virtue, and requested his removal in favor of a more virtuous heir. The court resonated with numerous supporters, shaking the foundation of the Eastern Palace. Everyone believed that a significant political change was imminent, while the fourth prince was enjoying his moment of triumph. However, a few days later, General Wu requested an audience and spoke in defense of the crown prince multiple times, gradually calming the storm of demotion. The talk of dethroning the crown prince seemed to dissipate rapidly. General Wu was the crown prince's uncle, and the Wu family was the maternal family of the empress. Half a month later, a distinguished guest arrived at my estate. It was none other than the fourth prince. This time, he came to see me of his own accord, while I sat in the host's seat. "Your Highness, it's been a while." I raised my hand, and a maid served hot tea. He was dressed in his usual ornate robes but seemed more irritable, lacking the composure he had during our last meeting. "It seems you again anticipated my arrival?" His eyes scrutinized me. I chuckled lightly. "Of course, after all, I said I would assist you." "To unseat the heir, one must first deal with the Wu family," he said with a hint of ruthlessness in his tone. I slowly stood and walked to his side, standing shoulder to shoulder with him, saying solemnly, "Then let's move this obstacle of the Wu family." He appeared surprised by my ambition and audacity, then resolutely said, "I don't have enough evidence to bring down the Wu family." I looked him in the eye and declared, "My father and brother died at Qingyang Pass due to the Wu family's schemes. Delaying military aid, forming factions, harming loyalists, monopolizing military achievements, are these charges not enough?" The fourth prince's expression became grave as he looked at me with shock. There was more than just the insult of the broken engagement between the crown prince and me, there was also a deadly feud with his maternal family. The fourth prince stayed only half a day at the estate before hastily leaving. When the crown prince believed his position as heir was secure, new turmoil arose in the capital. General Wu was accused of embezzling military funds and providing inferior supplies. And the Wu family's second son was implicated in the illegal seizure of farmland, resulting in fatalities. These were the fourth prince's bait. Initially, the Wu family did not take these allegations seriously, believing there was always room for maneuver. However, when my grandmother and I struck the complaint drum, the matter became grave once more. My grandmother and I knelt before the palace gates, and I held the indictment aloft, crying out regarding the Battle of Qingyang Pass, accusing General Wu of delaying aid and causing the wrongful deaths of my father and brother, imploring the emperor to punish the traitor. I repeated my cries until the bystanders, initially shocked, gradually became indignant. Then the palace gates opened, and the emperor's personal attendants summoned us into the palace. I knelt in the resplendent hall, facing the full court of ministers, unafraid, especially of General Wu's menacing glare as he accused me of slandering a court official, a serious crime. Despite his threats, my resolve was unwavering. Some accounts, no matter how long delayed, must eventually be settled. I bowed to the emperor. "Your Majesty, please seek justice for my father and brother." During the Battle of Qingyang Pass, my father and brother heroically defended the city. General Wu, charged with providing reinforcements, intentionally delayed, using my father and brother's troops to deplete the enemy's main force. My father and brother held the line until the last moment. The enemy army was already exhausted. General Wu then swooped in for an effortless victory, claiming all the credit. On the surface, my father and brother died at the hands of the enemy, but in reality, they were victims of betrayal by their comrade. The world praises my father and brother's loyalty and bravery, unaware that their sacrifice could have been avoided. Pure fabrication, utterly baseless. On that day, a blizzard trapped my troops on the way, not deliberate delay. General Wu vehemently defended himself. "I have a witness." The deputy my father sent requesting reinforcements is still alive, I announced loudly, causing a stir among the ministers. The emperor raised his hand, summon him. When the witness arrived, General Wu's face had already changed. He knelt and said, "Your Majesty, on that day, the Wei family father and son valiantly defended Qingyang Pass, waiting long for reinforcements. Ordered by them, I led a few to seek help from General Wu, but he refused to send troops, commanding his army to remain stationary and ordering my execution. By sheer luck, I survived after falling off a cliff. Upon awakening, I learned of the Wei family father and son's demise and General Wu's triumph. I have hidden my identity for over a decade, waiting for this day to reveal the truth. I implore your Majesty to punish the traitor and restore justice to the Wei household." The emperor's face darkened, and he looked at General Wu with scrutiny. But that wasn't enough. I spoke clearly, "Your Majesty, I also have material evidence to present." It is a handwritten letter from General Wu himself, bearing his private seal, ordering the governor of Peace City not to dispatch troops to support Qingyang Pass. He held back his forces and also cut off potential reinforcements from the surrounding areas. Peace City is very close to Qingyang Pass and had troops stationed there. If they had been able to support that day, my father and brother might have had a chance at survival. After reading the letter, the emperor was filled with rage. "General Wu, what do you have to say for yourself?" All the ministers in the court knelt down in trepidation. "Seize him!" The evidence was irrefutable, leaving no room for General Wu to argue. He had already been detained by the imperial guards. When we exited the palace, my grandmother and I clung to each other. She sat in the carriage with tears streaming down her face. She held my hand, her eyes full of relief, and said, "You did it. You avenged them." The decree for posthumous honors had been issued. In front of the Wei family's ancestral hall, I knelt on the prayer mat, unable to hold back my tears. Choking, I said, "Father and brother, if you have spirits in heaven, you must have seen it. I avenged you." Over these 10 years, a heavy stone weighed on my heart. Today, the stone has fallen, and my heart is finally at peace. When I walked out of the ancestral hall, I felt a long-forgotten lightness. The entire Wu family was imprisoned, awaiting trial by the 3 judicial offices. The Wu family confessed without hesitation and was sentenced to execution after the autumn harvest. The crown prince and the empress were both confined and heavily guarded. I slowly ascended to the highest point of Cloud Tower, overlooking the 4 directions. Storm clouds were gathering over the capital, and change was imminent. The 4th prince appeared silently beside me. It was clear that he was full of joy and vigor at this moment. We are now allies walking the same path. You have helped me reach this point. What is it that you want? In the future, whether it is the position of consort or empress, I can grant it to you. These can ensure the future glory of the Wei family. Your Highness and I are indeed like-minded. We weigh the pros and cons and analyze rationally. But what I want is not that. Upon hearing this, a look of shock appeared on his face. He had indeed offered the best choice from the world's perspective, as I was the only surviving descendant of the Wei family. In the eyes of the world, a woman's way to bring glory to her family is through marriage, and he had shown enough sincerity, promising me high status in the future palace. But that was not what I wanted. Amidst his puzzled gaze, I knelt and said firmly, "I wish to exchange my current assistance for your Highness's future effort to break conventions and open a new path for women to inherit noble titles." At that, he stood stunned, hands behind his back, and remained silent for a long time. In the end, he slowly helped me up and said in a deep voice, "Agreed." Several months later, the crown prince was deposed and the empress committed suicide. The 4th prince became the new heir apparent. The deposed crown prince was imprisoned in a separate mansion. One night, he set fire to the mansion, burning it to the ground. That night, the flames lit up the sky. People whispered among themselves. The deposed crown prince had no outstanding abilities but had become the crown prince due to his legitimate birthright. His talents and virtues did not match his position. The current emperor, overworked and plagued by successive court intrigues, finally fell seriously ill. The new emperor ascended to the throne and granted amnesty to the world. As he had promised, he defied the court's objections and issued an edict, allowing me to inherit the title of the Wei family. On the day I entered the palace to express my gratitude, I saw him sitting grandly on his throne, already exuding the imposing aura and dignified demeanor of a young emperor. This act of allowing me to inherit the title broke old conventions, blazing a new trail, and was bound to cause a sensation in the court and face significant resistance. So, I had long known that only by supporting the new emperor and helping him ascend the throne with great merit could I secure his support in defying the odds and issuing the edict. In the eyes of the world, the Wei family had no male heirs to continue the line, the marquisate should have been reclaimed. But I was determined to defy the expectations, inheriting the title as a woman and revitalizing the Wei family. He ascended the city tower, overlooking the rivers and mountains, and I followed behind him. He asked softly, "I promised you the position of consort or even empress, which could also bring glory to the Wei family. Why did you refuse? The path you've chosen is ultimately more challenging than the one I proposed." I looked up, cupped my hands, and asked boldly, "If I entered the palace, could your majesty truly be of one mind with me and never doubt me? Could your majesty keep the 6 palaces empty, allowing only one person?" He seemed surprised by my bold question, his expression dimming slightly. After a while, he seemed to confirm his own choice and said firmly, "No, I would not let any woman affect the stability of the kingdom. I will take many concubines to balance the court and extend the dynasty, ensuring the nation's eternal prosperity." This was the answer I had expected, and I replied firmly, "To be the mother of the nation or the favored one in the harem is indeed the dream of most women, but it is not mine. I have been burdened with the responsibility of revitalizing the Wei family since I was young. I want the Wei family to flourish as it did before, to be honored for a century, not to be a fallen, distant in-law talked about by the world." A look of understanding flashed in his eyes, followed by a hint of admiration. He chuckled lightly. "I originally thought that the position of empress was the highest honor a woman could dream of, but I did not expect your ambitions to be even greater." This demeanor was exactly the same as it was back then. "Your Majesty and I are equally clear-headed and rational individuals in this world. The best relationship between us is that of a wise ruler and a virtuous minister. Your Majesty aims to dominate the world and will surely achieve your grand ambitions. I will inherit my father's and brother's legacy and bring honor to my family. Your Majesty will have numerous consorts to balance the court and extend the dynasty, while I will find a young man who entirely loves me, invite him into my family, and rebuild the Wei family with one heart and mind. Though I am a woman, I will not be inferior to any man. The Wei family will certainly have its future glory." Hearing this, he was lost in thought for a long time before he said, "Very well. You possess the same courage as my mother in her youth, yet her ambitions could not overcome the confines of the palace walls. Now, you can embrace the vast world without being restrained." If she could see this, she would be joyful. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your fulfillment. I will undoubtedly do my utmost to assist Your Majesty." I bowed deeply. From then on, we were monarch and minister. After leaving the palace gates, the carriage moved slowly. But I heard a familiar voice. "Please, be merciful, I haven't eaten in days." I lifted the curtain of the carriage and saw a woman with disheveled hair, mud-stained clothes, and a face so dirty you couldn't make out her features. But I still recognized her by her voice. It was Yang Mei Lin. She hadn't perished in the fire at the other residence, but instead had escaped amidst the chaos, only to end up as a beggar. Memories of how she had once stopped my carriage in the street flashed before my eyes. Those old events seemed like they had just happened yesterday. I stepped slowly down from the carriage, but she hurried to run away as soon as she saw me. The attendants intercepted her. She knelt on the ground, clutching the hem of my garment, and said nervously with a sobbing voice, "I know I was wrong, please forgive me. I was used by others, treated as a substitute by the crown prince, and now I've fallen into such a state. I know I was wrong. Those luxuries have nothing to do with me, I can't see through the intrigues, I just want to go back to that little river town in the South City where osmanthus flowers bloom, and live as an ordinary fisherwoman." I raised my hand slightly, and the attendant placed a money pouch beside her. "The silver in here is enough for you to return to the South City." Her face was full of astonishment, and then tears streamed down as she choked with regret and said, "Thank you." If I had another chance, I would never step into the capital again. These were all matters of the past. I returned to the manor, and soon it would be the end of the year. Everywhere in the manor was decorated with lanterns and festoons, preparations were in full swing. I also selected many lively and clever maidservants to enter the manor. The place was filled with laughter and was very lively. On New Year's Eve, the sky began to snow. I kept vigil with my grandmother. We sat around the stove with wine warming on it. Grandmother smiled and said, "The gloom over the Wei family has lifted. From now on, we will have good fortune year after year, and peace for all time." I had a small drink with her. The charcoal in the stove was burning brightly, and I replied with a smile, "Year after year of good fortune, peace for all time." Just then, firecrackers sounded outside, bidding farewell to the old and welcoming the new. Everyone in the courtyard was chatting idly, laughter continuously echoed.